So, competitive debate at its core is about rhetoric, which Aristotle defined as the faculty for observing, in any given case, the available means of persuasion. And for me, I think that there's three important parts of that definition. And so the first part is the faculty for observing. And so what that means is the ability of the person to figure out something. So in this case, we're looking at the ability to observe a rhetorical instance. So this is a kind of speech. It might be a text that's written, or it could be something that you're watching. And you're able to, in that instance, identify what interests are being forwarded and how you're being persuaded when that message is being delivered to you. So it's your ability to figure that out, like what element of persuasion is in that message. But also, in any given context, the faculty to figure out how to persuade your audience. So that's both how are you being persuaded, the ability to figure that out, but also the ability to figure out how to persuade in a given context. And so the next one is in any given case, and that's to recognize that in every speech situation that we exist in, there are elements of persuasion. So in your home life, there's usually an element of persuasion that goes on between yourself, your siblings, or whatever. In school, there's persuasion that goes on between teachers and students and your peers, and they're all trying to influence you to do different things. And the same in the larger public, so in Denver, Colorado, and beyond as well. In all of those cases, so those large to small situations, and then in our day-to-day lives, there are elements of persuasion that can be done, and different people can be persuaded in different ways. So you might try to make an argument with one parent to allow you to do something, but you'd use a different set of arguments to maybe convince a different parent, or the same with your friend, or in a different situation. The point is that in any given speech situation, there are things that you can use in order to be persuasive, but you have to be able to identify those and differentiate those in different cases. And so the third one is the available means of persuasion. And so these are the tools to make your argument. And you'll know that in any argument, not all arguments are equal. Some arguments are very balanced, and there's good evidence on both sides of a particular argument. Other arguments are imbalanced, and some sides have just much better arguments or evidence or appeal than the other side. But the point is, the better you are at the practice of rhetoric, no matter how balanced or imbalanced those arguments are, you need to be able to use your abilities to figure out, in a particular context, what are all of the tools that you have to persuade your audience that your side is correct. So the study of rhetoric gives you a set of tools to approach any situation and figure out what can you do to make an argument to persuade that audience. And when we look at the means of persuasion, Aristotle helped us identify three means of persuasion. And in competitive debate, but also in most everything that you do in academic spaces and in your life, you'll be evaluated on these three criteria, at least in terms of how well you are to make your case for something. And so the first one is ethos, and ethos is ethical proof, and that is the credibility of the speaker. And so as a speaker, can you get who you're trying to persuade to align with your interests? Can you generate goodwill in those people? Do you look like someone that is credible on the issue? Do you speak to them in a way that is convincing? Do you, is the total presentation that you're giving one that they're ultimately interested in following and in believing, because you speak with credibility and authority? The second kind of proof is pathos, which is emotional proof. And this is an appeal to the emotions of the audience. The way I always think about this is like you see this in movies sometimes, or like, maybe in the, if there was ever like a town hall debate or like people that were arguing. Like if you've ever seen someone in the audience kind of nod their head along when someone's talking, like that is an example of appealing to the emotions of the audience. And so you can, depending on your audience, you can appeal to their emotions in a lot of different ways. For example, if you are a climate change activist and you're talking to a group of liberal environmentalists, you can talk about the environment and like how bad things are, and people are going to be really feeling what you're saying. But if you are at an NRA meeting and you're trying to persuade them about the ethics of global warming or the environment, you're going to want to use a completely different set of arguments. Maybe you want to appeal to, keeping nature preserved so people can hunt and use their, weapons or whatever. So you need to be able to figure out how can you tap into your audience's emotions and appeal to them on a level, on an emotional level. And then the third is the logical proof of the argument. And this is what evidence, what facts, what warranted reasoning have you presented? How sound is your argument? Is it valid? Have you, challenged important points? Have you been able to refute the claims of your opponents? And then taken together, the credibility of the speaker combined with a passionate argument with sound reasons is able to use those means of persuasion to figure out how to get your audience to believe what you're saying. And so it's important to understand what rhetoric is, because all of debate, no matter what kind of event that you do, is about rhetoric. The person that is the best rhetorician that can observe the way that their opponent is trying to persuade the judge and then figure out ways to undermine that and can use a credible combination of ethos, pathos, and logos will ultimately be the best speaker in the round, and more often than not, the best speaker in the round will win the debate.